What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week's episode, we're getting ready to slam that 6.0 into our Travelall. We also got fuel lines going in, brake lines going in. We only got 3 weeks till Holley LS Fest, so we got a lot of work to do. First thing we gotta do is make some modifications to that LS, so let's get to work. Since the Travelall is gonna be sitting nice and low, we picked up a new Holley oil pan, so it gives us more ground clearance. I got the old pan and pickup tube off, and I'm getting ready to install the new one. We made this notch here per Holley's diagram. Unfortunately, because this motor has an upgraded crankshaft, Holley obviously doesn't know what assembly we have in our block, so their diagram didn't work. So we're gonna have to extend this notch all the way out to here in order for our oil pickup to sit down inside of this pump correctly. Take this guy back off and make another notch. So Andrew had the bright idea of test fitting it before we went and assembled it all back up. And sure enough, not only do we have to keep going this way, we also have to cut out this section of the windage tray. We have to basically lop all this section out.
All right, so next order of business is to get our engine and transmission mocked up inside the Travelall. What I need to do is get the transmission bolted onto the engine, lift it up, slide it back in here, make our location for our mounting points as well as our tail shaft transmission mount. So we're gonna be using a Tremec TR6060 transmission. We have it from a takeout from another project that we were doing. This is actually a new product from Sikky manufacturing. They're using a Corvette-based pulley setup. This is a complete kit. It comes with the belts, pulleys, gaskets, fasteners. So I'm really excited to get this on and see how this thing looks on here. All right, so I've got the exhaust manifolds mocked up on here. I've just finished putting the accessory drive kit on as well. This Sikky drive kit is really compact. I really like it so far. It's utilizing a Corvette pump and balancer. It's got a mini sand end compressor tucked up real tight on the inside here. We have our power steering deleted, and then we have our GM alternator. They've added an idler, and it's got the factory location for our tensioner. So now that we've got all the accessories buttoned up on here and the exhaust on and the transmission, we can put the whole unit inside the truck, mock it up so we can start fabbing our engine mounts and our transmission cross member.
What you cutting, Liam? Some new motor mount fab. Attaboy.
All right, there you go. Our tabs are modified, ready to go back in. This should be the end of our motor mounts. Now we're just waiting on Fancy Andrew to finish his transmission out.
So that's the basic shape of the cross member for the transmission. The last thing we're gonna need is our mount. We're gonna weld one more plate along the bottom. So Liam's got this guy cut out for me. I transferred my holes, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and drill these out. And hopefully this is gonna end up being the pattern that I need to bolt up onto the transmission side. And then this will be our standard mount here. The adapter bracket is looking real good. Pattern came out right. Transfer marks worked out perfect. Now I've got my mount brackets cut down, trimmed, and the holes drilled. So these are gonna go onto the bottom of the frame rail, and then our cross member will weld into the inside of it right here. And it'll sit like so. Our mount will sit right in here. I still need one plate on the bottom here to finish this out. So I've got the mount, the bracket, and the adapter all mounted up in here. The only thing that I'm noticing now is that I have a bracket, an old bracket, right in the way of where I need to be. Cut this guy off, and then we'll set our plates, our mount plates on the rails. I've just wrapped up the transmission cross member for the TR6060. We've pulled the engine and transmission assembly back out so we can finalize our clutch assembly, and we're also going to lay some paint between the frame rails, and it's going to give us a chance to route our brake lines.
First good coat of the Poppy's chassis armor applied to our chassis. I'm going to get it back out and apply a little bit more. I definitely missed a couple spots.
All right, moving steadily along on the Travelall. My next task is to start all the brake plumbing. Got all my tubing, got a bunch of tube nuts and sleeves. I have a handful of bulkhead fittings here. My bending tools, cutting tools, markers, and hold down tabs. All right, so our crossover across the cross member is completed. Tucks underneath, down, nice and tight. Pops up over here. I have another bulkhead straight. I'm gonna cut this out into a little tab so I can mount this here. And then our stainless braided line can go straight down into our brake caliper. So once I get this tab mounted up, I'm gonna start moving on to the rear section right here. All right, so I've got my fittings in my proportioning valve. I've got it located where I want it to sit. All I got to do is make a little bracket for it. Now I'm going to take my measurement for my long run all the way to the rear axle. Once I get that done, then we can go to the back and get started on the rear section. That's a wrap. So we got the rear axle T all made up and bent up. Last thing we need is our five soft lines. The one that connects here, and then one going to each caliper at all four corners. So now I can move on to our next step. We're gonna work on our transmission and then get back on the plumbing. We finally have our missing link for our McLeod clutch. We've got our throw-out bearing spacer. We put our twin disc street clutch on here, so it's gonna be great for what we're doing. Burnouts, but also be able to cruise out on the street. So flywheel's on, pressure plate's on, it's torqued up. We've got our spacer behind our slave in here, and now we can mate everything together. All right, engine and transmission are finally in the Travelall for the last time, I hope. We moved the truck all the way from the middle of the shop over there to on the lift so we can work underneath the underside of the truck and also do all the other things without having to crawl underneath it. We have to do the fuel system plumbing. First, we're gonna get all our front body panels mocked up so we can start working on our radiator.
Moving on with more front end goodies, we're going to go ahead and get this Mishimoto radiator into the front of the truck. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and mount up our Restomod AC air condenser. So this guy's going to go like this. So we're going to make some brackets now to be able to come from here and mount to the side of this guy. Then we'll go ahead and throw it in the truck and start making our brackets for this to actually mount to the front core support on the International.
Hey, you guys recognize that face? Look at this guy. He got a haircut. He don't work here no more, but he's just coming here to hang out.
I've got the floor framing bolted down in here to kind of see what kind of stuff I have to work around. All this stuff is going to be decking or flooring that's covering this. This one small square here that has the pump is going to be open. So what I'm going to do for now, we're going to be running the lines just straight under the framing. So I'm going to shoot towards this corner right here with my feed line, my dash 10 feed line. You go straight along the frame rail and then all the way to the front. I'm going to assemble all my fittings onto all my components just to get a head start on the fuel system, and then I can start working on all the fuel lines. I've finally got my fuel rails with our new intake manifold, fuel pressure regulator that's going to mount just underneath the plenum here. So I want to get this stuff installed in the engine bay and on the engine, so I have a final point for all my hosing to go to. I also have to make a few short runs from out of the rails into the regulator, so I need to have them all in position so I can get the correct length cut. So I'm going to get this all installed onto the engine, mount the regulator and the rails. I'm also going to put my fuel injectors in here, lube them up and put them in. I have the regulator mounted here and my fuel lines coming from the trans tunnel area. It's going to be a little bit tricky to figure out how to make this all work into our regulator. All right, the engine bay side of my feed line is all set up. You can see I've got the Y block up to the 90s come into the fuel rail. So now I can finally terminate the last bit of my feed from the rear of the truck. So I'm gonna mark that out. And then the last bit I have to do is go back to the 10 micron filter, and I have to change out those fittings to the dash 10 because I finally got my hands on the correct fitting. So we'll change that out and we'll be done with all the fuel lines. Now that I've got the fuel lines almost all done, I'm gonna have to move on to the brake system to make sure the thing can stop as good as it goes. The Travelall originally came with 4-wheel drum brakes, so today we're gonna be converting it to 4-wheel disc brakes. We have the rear is where we're gonna be starting. We've got the rear housing off the differential. We're gonna pull our axle so we can bolt the backing plate on. As soon as we're done back here, we'll move on to the front. We have a set of Wilwood disc brakes that we're gonna be mounting on it today. 13-inch rotors in the rear, 14-inch rotors in the front. We have 4-piston caliper. We're moving along steady. Sean's up in the air, wiring away. So happy. He got his coffee, he's ready to go. We're gonna get to work. So I finally got the last of our stainless steel lines, all the soft lines that are going to go from obviously a hard line here on the frame rail to our rear differential, and soft line here on the rear as well. The brakes are ready to go. Now that I'm done back here with the brake lines, we can go ahead and move on to getting the floor installed.
We got our metal base in there. We do have a couple things that we gotta notch out a little bit more, like around this return line. We gotta slide the whole thing about a 1/2 inch. And then we're gonna make some beauty flanges to seal this in a little bit better, just so we don't have a lot of hot road air coming into the cab. Try to do something with the fill neck, just to kind of tidy that up. Eventually I'm gonna put a wood floor back here, so you'll never see this, but for now this is what we got. Now we just gotta make it fit. Now that we got the metal laid down in the cargo area, we got one more really awesome product going in from Sikky. This right here is the product that I'm most excited about. I mean, just look how sick that is. So what we got here is a 10-inch relocation shift point for a TR6060. So our factory shift point is here. They have it in different lengths for your relocation point. We've done something like this in the past. Timmy did it on Cha-Ching and it worked out great. But these guys took all the guesswork out of it. You don't have to fabricate, you don't have to modify it at all. You just basically bolt it on to the factory location and bam, now you got a short throw shift relocation setup, man. Made in the USA, baby. All right, we got our temporary shift handle and knob on here. We got our Sikky 10-inch relocation shift knob. We also have our trim, our trim panel that will go on later, and I'll have to have a shift boot, but I got something in store for that, so I ain't gonna tell anybody just yet. You're gonna have to wait to see to LS Fest.
Repurpose his old underwear.
It is a repurpose, but it's not my underwear. The piece de la resistance. So voila. All right, we Gucci. All right, now that we got the Sikky shifter back installed, we're gonna get this truck back up in the air so Tim can get on that exhaust and we can get this thing started for you.
So we've got as much of the exhaust system on as we can for now until we've got our drive shaft in. We have the engine filled with engine oil, our fuel cell filled with fuel, and we're ready to get this thing fired off for the first time.
Let her rip, tater chip.
See what our problem is.
What?
Our valve covers are too small. It's hitting the valve train. But just look at the overall valve cover. Yeah. It's never gonna start because they're hanging the valves up. We'll pull, we need a number 8 mil. Well, it did fire, but then it wanted to die. As we were cranking it and I was in the engine bay, I did see the valve cover moving. I know that we had a large aftermarket Scorpion rocker on here, and they were actually cut down and milled a lot to fit into the head. So my first thought was that we were having the rocker arms touching the bottom of the valve cover. I was hoping that it was gonna be very minimal, but you could see it's definitely keeping the valve train from doing what it needs to. It's hard to see the blemishes, like in this area here, in this area here, and in here. We haven't taken off the other side. You can see it all chunky right here. So it's definitely keeping the valve train from going in its full range of motion. So either the valves are not opening all the way or some of them are getting hung open. So we're gonna have to pull the other side off and address that, and the best way to solve this issue is to get a tall style valve cover.
I would call it a success. I mean, as long as we didn't damage a push rod.
I don't think we did damage the push rod. I really don't think so. All the way.
If the fuel pressure worked right away and we had it running, we probably would have damaged something. So the fuel pressure kind of saved us.
Yeah. If it didn't hesitate to start, we probably would have just let it rip.
Because you know a lot have been on that throttle, like, wah, wah. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to let you guys hear the Travelall idle. We all wanted it, but it's not going to happen tonight. We got some new valve covers coming. Our boy from Holley, Steve, he already texted me. He's sending some out. All the components in this engine compartment really fit well. Definitely that Sikky front drive kit looks awesome. Gives us a lot of room to work around here. So if you guys like the way that looks, go over to Sikky.com, check out their stuff. This is a brand new product that they're just getting ready to release. Also go check out their YouTube, man. They show you a lot of installation videos, product reviews, all kinds of awesome stuff. This next week coming up, we're gonna have a drive shaft in this thing. We're gonna finish the exhaust. We're gonna finish a bunch of other stuff. And we're also probably gonna do a burnout for you guys.
Yeah, we're gonna have the engine running and functioning exactly the way it should. I'm glad that we didn't continue to run it We could have caused damage by putting a bunch of metal shavings in the oil system, and that's a really bad thing. So good thing we caught it quick. We've already got a solution. We're moving on.
That's right. So till next time, man, we'll see you guys. We got a bunch of work left to do. We got 3 weeks left to Holley LS Fest. We got this car going. We got this truck going. Make sure that you're watching next week because we're going to get all this stuff together and have some fun. So
until the next episode, see y'all.